Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, or good night, depending on what time you're watching this. It is April 10th, Monday, 2023. It is 4:20 in the morning. Okay, this is part 6 of Nicholas Sparks' True Believer, Chapter 1. Jeremy already knew that the people chosen by Clausen weren't officially part of the act, even though Clausen's appearance was announced in advance and people had fought wildly for tickets to the show, which meant, of course, that the audience was loaded with life-after-death believers. To them, Clausen was legitimate. How else could he know such personal things about strangers unless he talked to spirits? But like any good magician who had his repertoire down pat, the illusion was still an illusion, and right before the show, Jeremy not only had figured out how he was pulling it off, but had the photographic evidence to prove it. Bringing down Clausen would be Jeremy's biggest coup to date, and it served the guy right. Clausen was the worst kind of con man, and yet the pragmatic side of Jeremy also realized that this was the kind of story that rarely came along, and he wanted to make the most of it. Clausen, after all, was on the cusp of enormous celebrity, and in America, celebrity was all that mattered. Though he knew the odds were utterly improbable, he fantasized about what would happen if Clausen actually picked him next. He didn't expect it. Being chosen was akin to winning the trifecta at Santa Anita. And even if it didn't happen, Jeremy knew he'd still have a quality story. But quality and extraordinary were often separated by simple twists of fate, and as the commercial break ended, he felt the slightest twinge of unjustified hope that somehow Clausen would zero in on him. And as if God himself wasn't exactly thrilled with what Clausen was doing either, that was exactly what happened. 3 weeks later, winter in Manhattan was bearing down hard. A front from Canada had moved in, dropping temperatures to nearly zero, and plumes of steam rose steadily from the sewer grates before settling over the icy sidewalks. Not that anyone seemed to mind. New York's hardy citizens displayed their usual indifference to all things weather-related, and Friday nights were not to be wasted under any circumstance. People worked too hard during the week to waste an evening out, especially when there was reason to celebrate. Nate Johnson and Alvin Bernstein had already been celebrating for an hour, as had a couple of dozen friends and journalists, some from Scientific American, who'd assembled in Jeremy's honor. Most were well into the buzz phase of the evening and enjoying themselves immensely, mostly because journalists tended to be budget conscious, and Nate was picking up the tab. Nate was Jeremy's agent. Alvin, a freelance cameraman, was Jeremy's best friend. And they gathered at the trendy bar on the Upper West Side to celebrate Jeremy's appearance on ABC's Primetime Live. Commercials from Primetime Live had been airing that week, most of them featuring Jeremy front and center and the promise of a major expose. And interview requests were pouring into Nate's office from around the country. Early that afternoon, People magazine had called, and an interview was scheduled for the following Monday morning. Okay, that's all for part 6, chapter 1, Nicholas Sparks, True Believer. Thank you for watching.